Welcome to this explainer on the high-stakes world of environmental auditing. Today, we're diving deep into the rigorous mechanics of the ISO 14001-2026 lead auditor. You can kind of think of these folks as the ultimate environmental detectives. But, they aren't just out there to read reports on a factory floor. Their ultimate goal is actually much bigger. It's to stand confidently before a corporate board of directors and prove with hard data that the company's environmental systems have true strategic effectiveness.
So think about this for a second. Anybody can write up a beautiful policy on paper, right? Claiming they care about sustainability, zero waste, pollution prevention, the whole shebang. But how do you prove an environmental policy is actually working out there in the real world? Well, moving beyond those paper promises requires a totally impartial, evidence-driven approach. It requires a lead auditor to actually get out onto the factory floor, dig into the data, talk to the staff, and uncover the absolute ground truth.
Here is our investigation lifecycle for today. We'll start with gathering objective evidence, then move to smart audit sampling, classifying nonconformances, writing and defending findings, conducting root cause analysis, and finally, closing corrective action requests.
All right, let's jump right into Section 1, gathering objective evidence.
This is the very first phase of the audit. This is where the lead auditor acts as that impartial investigator gathering the facts. So what exactly is objective evidence? Basically, it's verifiable information that demonstrates whether environmental management system, or EMS, requirements are actually being implemented effectively. The absolute crucial word here is observable. It has to be based on observable facts, not assumptions, not opinions, and definitely not what a manager confidently thinks is happening when they aren't looking. It's the bedrock that credible, defensible audits are built on. Honestly, if an auditor can't verify it, it simply doesn't count.
To build that solid bedrock, auditors cast a really wide net. They're looking at documented information, making physical observations, conducting personnel interviews, checking environmental monitoring results, and reviewing performance data. And what's truly fascinating is how these sources work together through a technique called triangulation. Imagine an auditor reading a really strict procedure about handling hazardous waste. Then, they walk out to physically observe the waste storage area. And finally, they chat with the operator actually handling that waste. If the document says one thing, but the operator is doing something completely different, well, the auditor instantly knows the system is breaking down. The evidence absolutely has to align across the board.
Moving on to Section 2, smart audit sampling. So here is the harsh reality of the job. An auditor just cannot check every single record or watch every single process. There literally isn't enough time in the day. Because of that, they rely on smart sampling methods to gather representative data quickly. For instance, they might use judgmental sampling, which leverages their own professional expertise to zero in on records that are most likely to show weaknesses. Or they might switch over to random sampling to keep things entirely objective. This prevents a company from just cherry-picking their absolute best files to show off. Then there's stratified sampling, where they divide evidence by department, just to make sure the night shift is following the rules just as well as the day shift. Systematic sampling checks records at defined intervals, like maybe pulling every 10th file. And critically, risk-based sampling heavily focuses the investigation on areas with the highest potential environmental impact. Think chemical storage or wastewater discharge. By combining all of these strategies into a perfectly balanced approach, auditors effectively eliminate sampling bias. They don't just blindly accept whatever management hands them, and they don't get bogged down in low-risk administrative paperwork either. Instead, they piece together a comprehensive, highly accurate picture of the organization's true environmental health.
Which brings us to Section 3, classifying nonconformances. Okay, once the evidence is sampled and gathered, the evaluation phase kicks in. The auditor now has to deliver a verdict on where the system is failing. They classify these failures into two very distinct categories, major and minor nonconformances. A minor nonconformance is basically an isolated lapse. The system is mostly working, even if, say, Bob from maintenance spilled his coffee on the spill response sign-in sheet and forgot to sign his name. The risk is low, but a small correction is needed. A major nonconformance, on the other hand, is a complete systemic breakdown. It represents a high environmental risk, like totally failing to evaluate the risks of a new wastewater discharge, or having absolutely zero emergency response procedure for a massive hazardous chemical tank. This classification is vital because it dictates exactly how urgently the company needs to act.
Now, here's where it gets interesting. What starts as a single minor deviation in month 1 can actually escalate into a major nonconformance by month 12 if it just keeps happening. Why? Well, because a persistent recurrence means the organization's corrective action system itself is broken. If an auditor keeps finding the exact same minor paperwork error year after year, it's no longer just a typo, right? It's a complete systemic failure of management to fix known problems. Next up, Section 4, Writing and Defending Findings. Drafting the official indictment is honestly a high-stakes art form. Listen to the precision of this bulletproof finding. Competence records for personnel responsible for hazardous waste handling were not available, indicating that competence requirements have not been demonstrated in accordance with Clause 7 requirements. The sheer brilliance of a statement like this is its indisputable clarity. It completely avoids vague, arguable words like poor or inadequate. It states exactly what was observed, and it logically links that factual observation directly to a specific ISO standard requirement. No wiggle room whatsoever. Because at the end of the day, evidence beats opinion every single time. During the closing meeting of an audit, it is incredibly common for auditees to get defensive, insisting their team knows exactly what they're doing. But when a lead auditor presents their findings to a corporate board of directors, they absolutely cannot rely on guesswork or defensive anecdotes. They need clear traceability and ironclad objective evidence, so their results hold up to the absolute highest level of executive scrutiny. All right, Section 5, Conducting Root Cause Analysis. So now we have to transition from just identifying the fault to interrogating the true reason for the fault. To investigate properly, we identify the nonconformance, investigate the underlying causes, target process design weaknesses, and then plan preventative systemic actions. A good investigation looks way, way past the surface symptoms. Like if a machine operator dumps the wrong chemical, the easy, superficial answer is just operator error. Case closed, right? Actually, no. Root cause analysis demands more. Was the training adequate? Were the labels completely illegible? Was the operator exhausted from mandatory forced overtime? We are hunting for deeper structural failures here, not just looking for a convenient scapegoat. So how do we actually find those hidden structural failures? We might use iterative questioning, like the famous 5 whys technique, which forces you to just keep asking why until you finally hit the rock-bottom base of the issue. Causal mapping is great too. It can visually connect process failures straight up the ladder to management weaknesses. Statistical trend analysis looks at long-term monitoring data to spot hidden deterioration long before a major incident even occurs. And cross-functional collaboration ensures that operations, maintenance, and environmental teams aren't just working in isolated silos. By using these tools, organizations ensure they are genuinely fixing the system itself, rather than just blaming the closest employee. And finally, Section 6, Closing Corrective Action Requests. We've reached the final rehabilitation step. In the ultimate audit trail, we track the ISO clause, the finding, the root cause, and the corrective action taken. But the final critical piece of the puzzle is the verification of effectiveness. Listen, a finding is never officially closed just because someone wrote a new procedure. It is only closed when there is measurable performance data proving the fix actually worked. This is exactly where auditing drives true strategic effectiveness. It's all about that lead auditor confidently standing before a board of directors, presenting a strategic effectiveness report with glowing data visualizations that show corrective actions didn't just fix a typo. They drove real downward trends in carbon emissions and dramatic upward trends in energy efficiency. So I'll leave you with this to think about. Are your audits just fixing symptoms, or are they curing the entire system? When applied properly, the rigorous mechanics of ISO 14001 auditing go far, far beyond factory floor paperwork. They drive genuine environmental performance improvement and strategic integration at the absolute highest corporate levels. They give executives the exact data they need to steer the ship. Thanks for joining me to explore this fascinating world of the environmental detective, and I highly encourage you to take this structured thinking back to your own organization to drive real, measurable sustainability. See you next time.